Hello guys, what is up? Bringing you a new video / podcast today. Today I will be talking hockey. I am without my good trusty partner Josiah today. So I'm going to be doing this solo. But yeah, let's get started with kind of a delayed video. I feel like I probably should have posted it sooner, but it's alright. All good there. So, first, let's talk about teams. What's surprising me, what's not surprising me. Like surprising players, non-surprising players, disappointing players. All that good stuff. So, let's start with teams. Number one team that's surprising me this year is the Toronto the Maple Leafs. And they surprised me because I didn't think they'd be this good, honestly. Like, we knew they could score. I mean, any team with Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, Thornton is going to be able to score. Like, it's just a rule. But we didn't know that they could be this good at D when they want to. Like, they've been one of the better D teams in the league, really, this year. Like, I'll put up some numbers on screen right now of their D stats, and they're definitely like above average, which is a big plus from years past. So, good for them on that. And obviously, like a couple other players on their team that I'm gonna be talking about later, both in the good and in the not as good. But Maple Leafs, yeah, first team. Second team that is really surprising me in a good way this year, Florida Panthers. Now, Florida's a pretty similar example, but Florida's getting a big bounce back from Officer Bob, who's playing pretty solid in net, which is good because they need him to, and with that contract that he's on. So, but like Huberdeau's playing fantastic. Barkov's a point per game. They don't seem to be missing Hoffman or Dadonov as much. Ekblad is coming a lot more into his own. Like, they're just getting solid output from every player in their lineup, and obviously that's fantastic for them. And Florida's one of the top 5 teams in the league right now, and win percentage they're first, I believe. So, as of recording. So, good for them. Really surprising, though. Did not expect they'd be this good. But obviously good for them. The next team I'm going to be talking about in terms of good surprises is Montreal. So Montreal is... I mean, maybe I shouldn't say Montreal because Montreal started off the season good. Like, they would have been the first team I mentioned at the start of the year. But they've really dropped it off lately, dropping 5 of the last 6 games, including... as of recording, a game against Ottawa in OT, where they played one of the worst OT periods possibly ever seen by an NHL team. Like, it was bad. So, they're really struggling lately. Like, Price is still doing solid, but not as good as he was at the start of the year. And that offense has just dried up, particularly against the Sens this year. Sens have a thing for beating the stronger teams, like the Leafs and the Habs. But that's still unacceptable. Like, the offense is completely dried up. Toffoli, 8 goals in 5 games against the Canucks. Only 2 in the remainder of the games Montreal has played. That's simply unacceptable. You can't just be only playing well against Vancouver, and that's not just because I'm a Canucks fan. Yeah, that's unacceptable. Really, yeah, it's hard to say he's a disappointment when he's top 5 in the league in goals, but 8 of those are in the 5 games they've played against the Canucks. So, it's hard to say that he's been a success either. Because he's only really, as I just said, he's really only been useful when they play the Canucks. That's it. And they haven't played the Canucks in a while. So, he's dropped off. The team's dropped off. Like, Petry's dropped off too. He started off the season Norris candidate level. Like, really up there with, Makar and Hughes and Hedman and Yossi and, those D-men. But he's really dropped off lately, and so have the Habs. So, I guess, At the start of the year, they were getting good contributions from Josh Anderson. To Foley started off better because they were playing the Canucks more. Price was absolutely lightning. Petrie was amazing. And so, if I was going off that, yeah. So there were some pluses at the start of the season, but right now it's all downhill. Now let's go into some teams that have been kind of disappointing me. First one, my team, the Canucks. Now, I've watched the Canucks games, and I see some problems. First, while they've lessened this a bit in recent games, they have a very good tendency of not a good tendency, but a bad tendency of giving up horrendous scoring chances. Like, all the time, you'll see one of the Canucks guys trying to, cross it across the blue line or something. And an opposing player will just jump in, grab the puck, and they're on a breakaway. And even though the Canucks' performance in itself has picked up lately, last night's performance against the Jets, a perfect example, especially in the first period, they still ended up losing, albeit in OT. It took a power play goal from Petey, 37 seconds left on the clock, or Pettersson, just to bring it to OT. They were up 2-0 after the first, and they completely blew that lead. Dubois got 3 points. The Canucks on D, after that first period, played more like they have in the rest of the games. They had their moments when they were just absolutely dominating play. They were getting some solid shots. Petey hit a crossbar on a previous power play, so, they got close a few times, but just not at the level they should be at with the talent on their roster. I'll say that. And goaltending, well, I don't think the goalies have been as bad as their numbers suggest. They haven't been great either. Demko, not even remotely close to last year in the playoffs, though I don't blame him. I don't know many goalies that could perform that well. But he's not even remotely close to it. He's not on the same planet, really, as he played in the playoffs. And Holtby really hasn't played that much better. Both goalies have had rock solid games, but in the end they're being too inconsistent to seal a starting job. That's why they're still splitting games. Another team that's disappointing me is Calgary. Calgary started off decent, but a lot more recently they've kind of struggled. I'd say, they lost both their games against the Oilers. The Canucks, as I said before, were disappointing, and the Canucks came out of it with a 2-1-1 record against the Flames. So, if you're the Flames, you'd say that was a losing effort. A lot of the season has been about the Flames players having lack of effort, lack of emotion when they're losing big, and really only Matthew Tkachuk coming through in terms of that department. And Markey started off the season fantastic, but where Markey goes, the Flames go. And right now, Markstrom, I should say, is not playing as well as he could be, so he's going to not play as well. And the Flames, in turn, are not playing as well. I just don't think the Flames have the pieces that they need to make the playoffs and then win the Stanley Cup. They could make the playoffs just off of talent alone, you could argue. But off of pure will and determination, the only guy on that team that can provide it is Tkachuk. All of the other Flames players don't exactly have a tendency to show lots of emotion and determination, and a lot of them have a tendency to disappear in clutch games. The Flames, past few years, had some struggles in the playoffs, even if they did better in the regular season. And this core, I think it needs to be shaken up. Gaudreau, Monahan, Giordano, all those guys, I don't think they're part of the core that you need. I think Markey's a good starter. I think that's a good starting piece. Tkachuk, he could lead your offense. Honestly, if you had a bunch of guys kind of like him, then your team could make it probably off of pure will and determination. And annoyance, lots of annoyance of the other team. So, I don't think that no disrespect to those three guys, Gaudreau, Monahan, and Giordano. I think you're great players, but you're not showing enough emotion, and you're clearly not leading this team. So, last team that's disappointing me, and no, it's not in the North Division. Yeah, that's probably what a lot of you guys are thinking. The last team that is kind of disappointing me this year is Minnesota. Oh, no, actually, yeah, Minnesota, and then Nashville too. So Minnesota, I guess Minnesota's not like disappointing me that hard. I kind of came into this season thinking, oh, they were gonna be bad, but I didn't think they'd be this bad. I'm really gonna be honest. Like they're one of the worst teams in the league, and they seem to put up good defensive numbers every year, but that just doesn't translate to their goalie coming down. I think it really all comes down to goaltending, and you don't have your number one in Talbot, and last year you didn't have your number one in Dubnyk, and look how that turned out. I think you need to pick and choose. I think you need to pick whether you're going to be a playoff team this year, or you're going to start rebuilding. Like, I really do think it's time to start a rebuild. You don't have anyone in net. You don't have that many good prospects. The past few guys that you've drafted, like Kirill Kaprizov, is the only one that seemed to have turned out in recent years. And yes, he's turned out this year for sure. So you have Kaprizov and you have Fiala. Those are two good starting pieces for an offense. Kaprizov, like probably future 40-goal scorer, 80-point guy. Like any team would be happy to have a guy like that. Fiala, I think at his peak, he's probably going to reach 65 points if he hasn't already hit his peak already. Which, again, that's another good guy, and we'll talk about a guy that puts up similar totals to that later in Nashville. So that's a good starting piece for your offense. On D, you have no one really in terms of like young guys. You have a solid D core that's been there for years. Suter, Brodin, Spurgeon, Dumba, they've all been there. But Dumba's fallen off a cliff lately. Like potential-wise, he's gotten hampered by injuries too. He just doesn't look like the same guy. Spurgeon and Brodin, they're probably too old, but they also just don't come into it with the talent necessary to lead a D-core. And then Suter's he's too old at this point. Like, he's going to be retired long before the rebuild's done in Minnesota. So I think what Minnesota needs to do is, I doubt they're going to be able to get rid of Suter and Parise. Like, I think you're just going to have to hold on to those contracts. Like, signing them, I won't say signing them was a mistake. Signing them that long of a contract was probably a mistake, but, if they had won a cup, it would have been worth it. They just didn't. So that's fine. Now you just have to live through the contract. That's fine. Like, Kaprizov's not up for another couple years. Fiala's already gotten the contract, so they don't have a lot of guys coming up right now that they need to use that Suter and Parise money for, which is good because they're not in great situation in terms of cap. And now you can't really get rid of Spurgeon either, because he's signed for the next 7 years. So there's another guy you can't really get rid of. So I looked at shopping Brodin. I looked to see if you can maybe, if it's the right return, get rid of Dumba, because Dumba's on a decent contract. He may still have some potential left. Just see what you could get. I bet Minnesota kind of wishes they had at least looked to see if they had done a Dumba for Nylander trade, because that would have turned out a lot better for them. Right, like looking at it right now. So, and Toronto's probably glad that they didn't. So I think what Minnesota needs to do is they just need to sell off a few of their players. Like, sell off Talbot. Like, he's cheap. He'll be a solid goalie for a contending team. Like, he can be a solid backup if the starter gets hurt. He's streaky. He's very capable of going hot. Like, decent backup there. I'm sure a team would be willing to pay like a second and a third or something for him. You get that. You start garnering up hits. Like, you start drafting solid prospects. Start getting rid of cap. And this happens over years, so eventually all the poor decisions you made in terms of contracts expire. And then players retire, and then you have a totally different team. I think I just described the process of rebuilding. But yeah, Minnesota's kind of disappointing me this year, and disappointing me by not performing on the ice, but also not making the actions needed to make the team better or worse. Last team, Nashville. Now, I did not expect Nashville to be good this year. I didn't. I didn't expect them to be this bad. Like, it's kind of similar to Minnesota. It's really time to rebuild. I won't go over all of that again, but with this team, you'd think you'd be doing a bit better. Like, goaltending, well, looking at it now, it's one of the worst tandems in the league. Like, Rinne's fallen off a cliff. Saros is not living up to his potential and probably never will. Like, is there any potential left at this point? So, goaltending's not great. So, Rinne's probably going to retire after his contract ends. And then Saros is going to be the starter for a few years, I think, while Nashville tries to figure out what to do. And then on D, like, you have solid D-men. Yossi, Ellis, Ekholm. All those guys are, like, approaching 30, if they're not 30 already. So they're not exactly guys to go into a rebuild with, because by the time you come out of it, they'll all be, like, near the end of their careers on, still on a good-sized contract. So they're not the best guys to rebuild. If you could get rid of them now, I think that would be a good idea. If you wanted to rebuild, because you'd be able to get a lot more for Yossi now, even with that contract, considering he's the reigning Norris Trophy winner, than you would in a few years. So I say you try to figure out how to sell off those guys, because it's clear that it's not working out this season. And this team can't score. Like, you don't blame David Pulley that the team can't score, really. I think he's really done his best to make it work for this team. But in the end, getting a bunch of second-line centers and trying to shoehorn one of them into the first-line center role, it's not going to work. Like, if you're David Pulley, you have to look at how Montreal solved that problem and getting the number one center. And yeah, they took a long time to do it, but they figured it out. And look where they are now. They have Suzuki, they have Kakiniemi. Like, they have all these young centers, and they're going to have to move one of them to the wing. Like, Ryan Poling, when he comes back, or, like, yeah, when he goes to Montreal, he's going to be playing wing, probably. Like, unless you want to play him fourth-line center. So, you have to look at how Montreal did it. Montreal kind of did a trial-by-error thing. They drafted some centers that didn't work out. Like, Bergevin also kind of Bergevin kind of made some mistakes in the draft. Like, maybe Kakiniemi, while he's playing well now, maybe he wasn't the best choice at the time. Trying to kind of shoehorn that in. The Suzuki trade ends up being really smart for them. Pacioretty's really good for Vegas. I don't think Vegas is super upset at themselves for that. But it's really hard to say Montreal's hasn't already won the trade. And if they've already won the trade, that's pretty scary, because we haven't even seen the best of what Suzuki's going to be able to do. So, yeah, if you're Nashville, you have to look at how Montreal did it. Like, absolutely. Next, we're going to be looking at players. Okay, so first player that has really, not really surprised me, but surprised me. Surprisingly, McDavid. Yeah, I know it's a pretty surprising choice, but McDavid has done way better than expected. Like, 2 points a game, he's leading the league in points by a mile. And, like, he's up there in goals. And he's just absolutely dominating. Like, really. If I was giving out awards this year, even though he's probably not the most valuable relative to his team, I don't know who would it be. Because McKinnon can't say this year that, he got like, line mates that were injured or whatever, right? Because he's not Rantanen and Landeskog this year. Plus, he's not playing as well. So he's out of the picture. McDavid's got Draisaitl, sure. And Draisaitl would try to sip home some votes, too. But I doubt Draisaitl's going to win because McDavid's on his team. It's really hard to say this guy should win the Hart Trophy. Like, it'd be like giving Malkin the Hart Trophy when Crosby played the entire year, right? So I doubt it would be Draisaitl. Panarin hasn't reached those numbers this year. Eichel hasn't either. Pasternak's got Bergeron, and I hate to say it, Marchand. And plus, the Bruins are one of the best teams in the league. Like, everyone on Tampa that's good has one another. So anyone playing on Tampa's out. Like, I don't know who you would give the Hart Trophy to this year. I feel like by default you'd have to give it to McDavid because, like, even Matthews, who I'll talk about later too, like, he has Marner, Nylander, and Tavares. Like, who would you give it to? Because all the players that are playing really well this year, they have other line mates. There's no one that's doing a one-man show just absolutely dominating the league with no one else playing shotgun. Like, there's no one this year that's just carrying the entire team on their back. No one has to. Or if they do, the team just sucks. Like, no one expects Brady Tkachuk to do it in Ottawa or Dylan Larkin to do it in Detroit. But I don't know who I would give it to, but I think McDavid's probably the closest option just because he's been so dominant. Like, and he's already filled up the highlight reel. Like, beauty goal on Vancouver, toe drag move as he skates in. He just skates through every Toronto player on the ice like it's no big deal. And that move was a lot more impressive than I feel like the goal he scored last year, which I feel was overrated, but that's not the point. Like, he's filling up the highlight reels. No goal against Markstrom. Like, when have we ever seen that? Like, he made this a sick skate play, knocks it up to his stick when he strips Calgary winner of the puck. He goes in on a 2-on-1. He's looking at a player the entire way, and without looking back at Markstrom, snipes it. Just puts it in the net. Like, Markstrom, you could tell, never saw that coming, really. Like, he's just been so amazing all year, putting up all the points, getting all the goals. And Draisaitl's been fantastic this year, too. But he's not on McDavid's level like he was last year. He's not, because McDavid has elevated himself. So, McDavid's playing even better than I expected. Next player that's really surprising me, and it's a good surprising, Austin Matthews. Man, he's good. Like, we have not seen a fully unleashed Matthews until this year. We haven't. Think about it. All the years he was playing with Babcock, Babcock usually likes to put ice time more with the veterans, and so he didn't play Matthews that much. Like, there's a very famous incident that I've talked about on the J&J Hockey podcast. Check that out. Where Babcock actually gave Marleau more ice time than Matthews in a game. Matthews was fully healthy, everything, and he played Marleau instead. And Toronto needed a goal. What coach decides that they're going to put Marleau instead of Matthews on the ice if you need a goal? Like, unless you have this weird feeling that Marleau's just going to score. He didn't. Which, like, all would be forgiven here if Marleau had actually scored, or someone on the ice at least had scored. But the point is that Matthews has either been hampered by injury, or hampered by lack of ice time, or both. But this year, all the dots have connected. No injuries for Matthews, and Sheldon Keefe is smart enough that he's not gonna like restrain Matthews' ice time for no good reason. Like, he's smart enough to know that. So, all of the pieces are connecting for Matthews this year. And it's sure as heck paying off. Like, 15-game point streak right now, as of recording, puts up 22 points in that span. Just absolutely insanity. Puts up, like, 14 goals or 13 goals or something during that span, too. Like, he's playing amazing. He's got a beauty goal against Vancouver, too. Like, Vancouver's just everyone's punching bag. Like, he's putting up highlight reel goals. He's absolutely sniping the puck. Like, he's leading the league in game-winning goals. I believe in his point streak, he's got 4 game-winning goals. So chances are he does lead the league in that category. So he's coming in clutch for his team. He's scoring goals by the bunches. He's getting points. He's being a leader. Like, he's working more on his, like, when he's doesn't have the puck, he's working on that too. Like, you can tell by watching him, he's playing a lot better defensively. If it's not McDavid that gets the Hart Trophy this year, it could well be Matthews. Well, just because of the sheer dominance that Matthews is producing, just like McDavid. Like, Matthews is dominating everyone this year, and it's going to be interesting to see the rest of the Edmonton-Toronto matchups this year, just to see who comes out on top. Last guy I'm going to talk about, another good surprise. Actually, well, there's 2 more guys, but, like, I'll get to them both. So, next guy, Mitch Marner. Pretty similar to Matthews in a way. Like, he hasn't really been injured, but Babcock kind of restricted his ice time, same as Matthews. So, we haven't seen a fully fledged, in his prime, Marner yet. Until this year. And now we've seen what he can do. 32 points in 24 games or something this year so far? Playing on Matthews' line? You don't get to say... He's a lot like Draisaitl. You don't get to say Draisaitl is, like, being carried by McDavid or whatever. You just have to accept Draisaitl is just that good on his own. Same with Marner. You can't say Matthews is being carried by Marner. Or, sorry, Marner's being carried by Matthews. you just have to accept Marner's just that good on his own. And he's playing good defensive hockey. He's on the puck. He's always been really dogged, and I do see true captain written all over him. He's willing to give himself for the team. Good defensively, fantastic offensively. What's not to like there? Honestly, for future captain material, I feel like after Tavares, they'll probably give it to Riley or maybe Matthews. So I doubt Marner would get it, but something I'd consider Marner for sure. He's definitely worthy of the assistant of the A on his jersey. So Marner's providing leadership, playing solid defensively. He's scoring. He's getting his points. Overall, he's playing absolute fantastic. Last guy I want to talk about in terms of surprising good players is Brock Besser. He's second in the league in goals. 12 goals in the league. He's, tied for second with a couple other players. Sits behind Matthews. No one's going to catch Matthews. He's going to win the Rocket this year. But Brock Besser's doing rock solid. He's scoring goals. When you watch him, he's just so, stealthy. He always just seems to kind of sneak up on you. It's like when Matthews or McDavid is playing, you, immediately tell they're on the ice. There's just some sort of, aura around them. You can just tell that they're on the ice. But Besser just tends to always seem to just kind of sneak onto the ice and then just snipe it past the goalie. He just always kind of just seem I bet a lot of people that have looked at the goal charts and gone whoa, Brock Besser's on here? What? He's playing fantastic in terms of scoring goals. That lotto line this year has really picked it up lately. Petey, Pettersson, Miller, and Besser have really picked it up lately. They're playing so well. And Besser's a part of that. He's leading the group in goals. So, I think just off of goals, you have to have him on this list. Because no one expected that at this point in the season, Besser would be second in goals in the league. Behind only Matthews. So, I think he has to be on the list just off of that. So, that's all the good surprises for players and teams. And I went into bad surprises. So, bad surprises for players. Players, I'm going to go... It's pretty tough. I think McKinnon's disappointing me a little bit. He's not showing off that sheer dominance that I really thought we'd see from him this year after his playoffs last year. Everyone got injured. Colorado's goaltending just kind of disappeared when everyone got injured there, too. But now that McKinnon's got reinforcements, he's kind of just point-per-game player. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a compliment, really, if you say that a player is playing not great if he's a point per game. That means that you think incredibly high of that player, and I do think that of McKinnon. So, if anything, this is kind of a compliment. But, he's never been great defensively, so he needs to be producing offensively. I just don't think he's up to the levels that he's capable of, really. Next guy, Petey. Pettersson's picking it up lately. He's got a couple of goals against Winnipeg as of last game, including, as I mentioned before, the OT forcing goal with 37 seconds left on the power play. But overall, he's just kind of been inconsistent. He shows up, and then he just kind of disappears. Which, it sucks. But I'm not saying he's playing badly, but it's a lot like McKinnon. I just don't think he's playing up to his potential. Coming in this year, I thought he was probably a top 10 player in the league, and I was not alone on that. It was not a Vancouver bias. A lot of people thought he was top 10 player in the league. He's not playing like one right now. He's not quite up to that level, I think. Just my opinion, I just think he should pick it up a bit. So, last guy is William Nylander. Nylander, he's just not... It's the same as Petey. I don't have a lot to complain about, except that he just needs to pick up the the numbers a bit. He's not quite getting the points that I feel like we should be expecting. I feel like at this point in his career, Nylander should be a point-per-game player. I think that's fair to expect, especially with what his line mates are doing. Like, it's clear that Matthews and Marner have separated themselves completely from a tier of Nylander and Tavares. Like, Nylander and Tavares are, like, on the second tier right now, and Matthews and Marner are on the first. That's not to, like, that's not to say anything, like, mean or whatever about Nylander and Tavares. Like, they're great players, but it's just that Marner and Matthews are just that good. I just feel like both Nylander and Tavares should pick it up. Tavares has really struggled this year without being on the power play, so I think he should pick it up too. But overall, like, I don't have a lot to complain about other than just little lighter point totals than I feel like we should expect, really. So yeah, talked about all those. Next, I think I'm gonna get into some awards, and I'll talk about that a bit. Hart Trophy, I think I already went into this. It's going to be McDavid Matthews. So, because I already went into this, I don't think I need to go into it anymore. It's McDavid versus Matthews at this point. One other player could catch up. Two other players could catch up. Like, maybe Pasternak, who was injured at the start of the year. Maybe he, like, catches them, and then he gets himself into the race. Or McKinnon picks it up. Like, he has that potential to do it, so few other guys there that could do it. In terms of goaltending, I could see Markstrom kind of as like a top 10 guy. I doubt he's gonna like win the Hart Trophy, and I don't think he's gonna get anywhere there. But if there was a goalie right now, I'd probably pick Markstrom. Talbot's not quite up to the levels he was at last year. It kind of needs to be a team that's facing a lot more shots. Like Vasilevsky's never gonna win the Hart, for example, because Tampa's just already that good on their own, unless they really decline. So, in terms of goalies, Markey, McKinnon, Pasternak could catch up, but right now it's Matthews versus McDavid. Art Ross, McDavid. It's gonna go to McDavid. McDavid's gonna win Art Ross, probably by a lot. Because Matthews is a lot more of a goal guy, so he's not gonna catch McDavid in terms of points. Rocky Richard, same thing. It's pretty obvious. Matthews. He sits ahead in goals right now of the second closest player. Like, and I think he's only going to further heighten that gap. So, next is the Norris. So, the Norris Trophy, best defenseman in the league. Haven't really talked about this a bit until I was talking about Montreal. So, Petry's still up there. If he can continue the pace, I doubt it. But if he continues the pace, then I think he could stay up there. Makar and Hughes are both point per game. Hughes is top 5 in assists in the league right now. I don't know. I haven't watched too many Colorado games. I will say that. But Hughes, in terms of defense, I don't know if he's earned it. Like, in terms of points, for sure. But I don't know about in terms of defense. I've kind of been disappointed by his defensive play this year. I don't know about Makar, but I know that Makar and Hughes play pretty similar. So if Makar has played similar D to Hughes, I think both of them will probably just cancel each other out then. And then neither will win. I don't think Petry's going to win either. I really don't. Yossi, Hedman, and Carlson, all of them are playing pretty well, but I don't think any of them are at the level that they were at last year. So it's really tough to say. I think it's not an open and shut case. I think there are lots of D-men in the running for this, and I feel like Petry's kind of the only new D-man. Like, Shea Theodore's playing really solid too. He could be up there. But any of these guys could really win it. I'm going to predict Cale Makar right now. Just because I know he's putting up high point totals, and I haven't seen him play that much. So I don't know about his defense, and that's why I'm not saying Hughes. But if I saw Makar and Makar was playing similar D, I'd probably just have him kind of canceling out with Hughes. But right now, I'll say Cale Makar. Vezina, I don't know many players that are putting up like super high Vezina-worthy numbers. I know Price's numbers are pretty solid. Like Hellebuck's, I don't think they're quite up to the level of last year, but I think overall, Boston, like, you have to look at kind of solid defensive teams, because even if a goalie's not absolutely dominating and, like, saving his team from, like, sure danger or whatever, if the team has solid defensive numbers, most likely the goalie will too. Like, most likely. But, and I could talk about that later because there's a recent Hockey News article about it. So I might talk about that quickly later. Overall, though, like, I think it could go to Rask in Boston. It could, because Boston's always a good defensive team. Rask finished second in Vezina voting last year. Markstrom could be up there. I really do think Markey could be up there if the Flames pick it up a bit. In Florida, Officer Bob, he's really picked it up. If, like, Florida gets up there and continues dominating like they are, I see no reason why Officer Bob couldn't win another one. So, right now, my predictions, Markey, if they keep it up. If Calgary, like, well, not keep it up, but, like, if Calgary kind of, like, plays better than they are recently, then they could get it. Honest, like, then Markstrom could get it, because really solid numbers. I think up until this recent losing streak, he had, like, .92 save percentage and 2.38 goals against average or something, like, really good numbers. So, those are my award predictions. So, Art Ross, or Hart Trophy, McDavid or Matthews. Art Ross, McDavid. Rocket Richard, Matthews. Norris, McCarr. And then Vezina, Markstrom. That's who I'm going to go with for right now. I have zero doubt in my mind that this will probably change at some point during the year, except any McDavid and Matthews predictions. Those will probably stay the same. But Vezina's probably going to change because that's more of a wash at this point right now. And same with the Norris. I feel like that prediction could change. And then, alright, Stanley Cup winner. For this season, I'll do Stanley Cup final, kind of between two teams there. Or, let's just pick a team to... No, never mind. So, honestly, if they keep playing like they do, that's a big if, Toronto's going to win the Stanley Cup this year. Don't laugh. I've predicted that before. When they got Tyson Barrie, I thought Toronto would, like, go all the way. And they did not. But I really do think this year, like, they're not going to be facing Boston in the first round this year. And they, like, so that's a big good thing. And not to mention, they're not facing Columbus either. So, really, I think who they have to take, I feel like Toronto's weakness right now is a really hard-working, physical team that wears down their stars. And one of the reasons why they're so successful in the North Division is not that many teams are like that. Vancouver Stars are Pettersson, Hughes, Miller, Horvat, and, yeah, that's it. Bester, too. So none of those guys really bring to mind a physical heart guy. Calgary, I talked about earlier, so I don't even really, like, Matthew Tkachuk's really the only guy there. Winnipeg, same deal. Connor, Ehlers, Scheifele, Hellebuck. Well, Hellebuck, obviously not, but, like, Wheeler. Wheeler's kind of up there, but he's not really going to scare a lot of guys. Well, if you look at Edmonton, McDavid, Draisaitl, Yamamoto, Nuge, Nurse. Like, if you look at all these teams in the North Division, they're, like, perfectly suited to face Toronto because they all play exactly like Toronto. And if you play exactly like Toronto, you're almost guaranteed going to lose because Toronto's just going to outscore you. Like, I feel like if Toronto was in a different division, say with, like, Boston, Columbus, like a lot of hard-working teams, Toronto might not do as well. I really don't think so. So, maybe not Toronto for the Cup, but I think right now they're going to come out of the North Division just because they've been dominating all their North Division opponents so far this year, and I see no reason why that shouldn't continue, even in the playoffs. So Toronto's going to come out of the North Division, maybe not go to the Stanley Cup final. My final choice for the Cup win, though, it could be Toronto. I could easily see Tampa repeating. Colorado's looking good. My prediction before this year was Colorado easy, as was a lot of people. I think it's probably going to be Colorado, honestly. So I'm going to go Colorado. And yeah, guys, that's going to be it. This is my first solo podcast, so please give me some slack. Because I don't know how good it was. I don't know how good it sounds. But if you guys like it, leave a like. Subscribe to Hey Ref. Check out my channel. I have some pretty old podcasts there. If you want to hear Josiah's lovely voice. Or if you want to watch Carey Price absolutely dominate every opposing forward ever, watch that video. That's the latest video as of now on my channel, besides this. Or if you want to watch NHL 21 greatest defensive play of all time, check that out too. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.